Tupac Amaru Shakur was born in 1971 in East Harlem, New York. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was a member of the Black Panther Party, and his upbringing reflected both political awareness and instability. Moving often during his youth, Tupac spent time in Baltimore and later in Marin City, California. He attended the Baltimore School for the Arts, where he studied acting and poetry. His early life was marked by poverty, but also by creativity and intelligence that would later define his work. In the late 1980s, Tupac joined the rap group Digital Underground as a backup dancer and rapper. He quickly gained attention for his skill and charisma, and in 1991 released his first solo album, Tupacalypse Now. The record dealt with social injustice, police brutality, and life in poor black communities. It was controversial, but it made him a voice for a generation. By 1993, Tupac was one of hip-hop's most recognizable figures. However, his fame was accompanied by frequent run-ins with the law. He was arrested multiple times for assault, weapons charges, and a sexual assault case that led to his imprisonment in 1995. Around this time, his relationship with other figures in the rap industry began to fracture, particularly with the East Coast rap scene centered around New York. The tension between East Coast and West Coast hip-hop became a defining part of the mid-90s. On the East Coast, artists like the Notorious B.I.G., also known as Christopher Wallace, were rising rapidly. Biggie had grown up in Brooklyn, where he turned to rap after spending time on the streets selling drugs. His debut album, Ready to Die, released in 1994, was an enormous success. It captured life in New York with authenticity and skill, establishing him as one of the leading rappers in the world. Initially, Tupac and Biggie were not enemies. They met in 1993 and were friendly, even performing together. Biggie looked up to Tupac, who had already achieved national fame, but that relationship began to deteriorate after November 30, 1994. That night, Tupac was ambushed and shot 5 times in the lobby of Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan. He survived, but he believed that people close to Biggie and Bad Boy Records had prior knowledge of the attack. Biggie and producer Sean Puffy Combs denied it, but Tupac was convinced he had been set up. While recovering, Tupac felt betrayed. The music he released after that incident carried an aggressive tone toward the East Coast. After his release from prison in 1995, thanks to Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, Tupac became the West Coast label's most prominent artist. Suge Knight had paid Tupac's bail in exchange for signing with Death Row. The label was based in Los Angeles and was in direct competition with Bad Boy Records in New York. The rivalry became personal. Tupac released Hit 'Em Up in 1996, a direct diss track aimed at Biggie, Bad Boy Records, and others. In it, Tupac claimed to have had a relationship with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans, and accused Biggie of copying his style. The record fueled an already volatile situation. Meanwhile, media outlets amplified the East Coast versus West Coast narrative, portraying the feud as a war between regions. On September 7, 1996, Tupac attended a Mike Tyson boxing match in Las Vegas. After the fight, he and his entourage, including Suge Knight, were involved in a physical altercation in the MGM Grand Lobby with a man named Orlando Anderson, a known member of the Southside Crips gang. Surveillance footage captured the fight. Later that night, while stopped at a red light on Flamingo Road, a white Cadillac pulled up next to Tupac's black BMW. Shots were fired. Tupac was hit 4 times, including one fatal wound to the chest. Suge Knight was grazed by a bullet but survived. Tupac was rushed to University Medical Center, where he died 6 days later, on September 13, 1996, at the age of 25. No one was arrested for Tupac's murder at the time. Police investigations were complicated by uncooperative witnesses, conflicting statements, and rumors. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department faced criticism for mishandling the case. Suge Knight refused to cooperate, and members of Tupac's entourage were reluctant to speak. The case soon went cold. In the years following his death, various theories emerged. Some claimed that Suge Knight orchestrated the killing to prevent Tupac from leaving Death Row Records. Others argued that it was gang retaliation. Anderson and his associates allegedly sought revenge for the earlier fight at the MGM Grand. A third theory suggested that members of the East Coast rap scene or Bad Boy Records were involved, though no solid evidence ever linked them directly. Christopher Wallace, the Notorious B.I.G., publicly denied any involvement in Tupac's death. However, the perception of rivalry only deepened. Biggie released Life After Death in early 1997, a double album filled with songs recorded before Tupac's killing but released afterward, adding to speculation that the two events were connected. On March 8, 1997, less than 6 months after Tupac's murder, Biggie traveled to Los Angeles to promote his new album and attend the Soul Train Music Awards. Despite tension between East Coast and West Coast figures, he believed the hostility had cooled enough for him to appear publicly. After a party hosted by Vibe magazine at the Peterson Automotive Museum, Biggie left with his entourage in a convoy of vehicles. At around 12:45 a.m., while stopped at a red light on Wilshire Boulevard, a black Chevrolet Impala pulled up alongside his SUV. The driver rolled down a window and fired multiple shots. Biggie was struck 4 times. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. He was 24 years old. As with Tupac's murder, the investigation into Biggie's death led nowhere definitive. The Los Angeles Police Department faced accusations of corruption and cover-ups. Witnesses gave conflicting accounts, and some refused to cooperate out of fear. The similarity between the two murders, the timing, method, and connection to the East Coast-West Coast feud, fueled the belief that they were related. Over time, journalists and former detectives began to investigate both cases independently. One of the most prominent was former LAPD detective Greg Kading, who led a special task force in the late 2000s. Kading's investigation concluded that Tupac was killed by Orlando Anderson, and that Biggie's murder was a retaliation carried out by Wardell Pucci Faus, a gang member allegedly hired by Suge Knight. According to Kading, the motive was revenge for Tupac's death, and the escalating war between Death Row Records and Bad Boy Records. However, these findings never led to formal charges. Anderson himself was killed in a separate gang-related shooting in 1998. Without his testimony, prosecutors lacked a key witness. Suge Knight has repeatedly denied ordering any killings, though his history of violence and control over Death Row kept him at the center of suspicion. Decades after the murders, both cases remain officially unsolved. Over the years, the killings became part of American cultural history, symbols of how fame, violence, and rivalry intertwined in the 1990s music industry. Both artists were posthumously celebrated as legends. Tupac was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2017, and Biggie followed in 2020. In 2023, a new development emerged when Las Vegas police arrested Dwayne "Kef D" Davis, a former Southside Crips member, in connection with Tupac's murder. Davis had spoken publicly for years about his involvement, claiming to have been in the car from which the shots were fired, though he said he was not the shooter. Police cited his own admissions as part of the evidence. The arrest came nearly 27 years after the killing, and it marked the first time anyone had been formally charged. Davis's statements suggested that the shooting was indeed gang retaliation following the MGM Grand altercation. While that case may finally move toward resolution, the murder of the Notorious B.I.G. remains open. His family has sued the city of Los Angeles multiple times, alleging that corrupt officers were involved in the killing and that the department covered it up. Several retired detectives have stated that evidence pointed to connections between rogue LAPD officers working for Death Row Records and the assassination, but none of these claims have been proven in court. Both men's deaths transformed hip-hop. The violence that surrounded their rivalry forced the industry to confront its own excesses. Rappers began calling for peace, and the genre slowly shifted away from direct regional conflict. Tupac and Biggie became icons, representing opposite coasts but united by their influence on music and culture. Their work remains among the most celebrated in hip-hop history. In examining both murders, investigators and scholars often note the same failures: poor witness cooperation, police corruption, and the influence of gang activity. Many people close to both artists lived under constant threat, where silence was survival. By the time law enforcement revisited the cases seriously, key witnesses were dead, incarcerated, or unwilling to talk. The Tupac and Biggie cases are often viewed not only as personal tragedies, but also as reflections of the broader social and institutional breakdowns of the time. The 1990s saw rising gang violence in Los Angeles, a deep distrust between black communities and law enforcement, and a media environment eager to sensationalize conflict. These factors created conditions where truth was obscured and justice delayed indefinitely. Today, both murders continue to attract public interest, documentaries, and new investigations. Each generation revisits the evidence, hoping for closure that has never come. The recent charges against Dwayne Davis may close one chapter, but the larger story, the intertwined lives and deaths of Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G., remains one of the most enduring mysteries in modern American history.